Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Burn. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by a really awesome progressive candidate from the great state of Virginia, Karishma Mehta. How you doing, Karishma?
I'm doing great. How are you, Eric?
Doing well. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me. You're an awesome candidate, and I want to get into your platform. And there's a couple things about you that really just brought a tear to my eye, just inspired me so much. In your campaign video, which I'll play as we go out, you specifically talk about incrementalism and how you're not, we ain't got time for that, right? And you called that out specifically. You're a grassroots candidate funded by people. I'll pull up your website, I'll pull up your district. All of that is absolutely amazing. And I'll talk, I'll ask you about your policy and so forth, platform and hopes and things like that. But I want to kind of ask a little bit about your background, just starting off. I understand you're an educator. Can you talk about what inspired you, what animated you politically, and then what inspired you to run?
Absolutely. So I am an educator. I'm a preschool teacher. I grew up in a working class family. My parents immigrated here from India in the 80s. I was born in New Jersey, but we moved around quite a bit. A lot of my childhood was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so I grew up in the South, and, that came with its own set of struggles, both economic and racial issues that I dealt with as a young person. I saw my parents struggle to put food on the table, to afford health care for themselves and for us. And we moved around a lot because of very high rent, lack of job opportunities. And so, I saw them sort of attempt to live out this American dream that they had come here to seek, this economic freedom, and never quite saw them achieve that. And as I grew up, as I went off to college, I inherited their struggles. I also struggled to put food on the table, skipping meals, not only through college, but even as an educator, and have those same problems that they faced as I was growing up. And so, I started questioning a lot of the things that I was seeing in society. When I became a teacher, I saw my students struggling with the same economic problems that now both my parents and I had faced. And so this repetitiveness of economic injustice that was manifesting in the classroom, knowing that our government, people in power, were putting corporate and special interests like the fossil fuel industry over the lives of the next generation. That was also something extremely concerning. We're seeing massive climate chaos and just a global emergency around the world, and we're not doing as much as we should be doing about it. So a lot of things really pushed me to the edge, and sort of forced me to realize I needed to do something urgent. I needed to do something, to protect, the future generation that I was teaching. And that's how I got here. I started organizing with the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2019, and moved into community organizing. So now I do tenant organizing, helping renters push back against corporate landlords, pushing back against Amazon coming into the district. And so, there's a whole lot of different aspects, of activism that have come alive. And I'm so excited to be utilizing what I've learned, through electoral politics, and also through the community into this campaign and building out that coalition.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah, I want to hit on a few of the things that you said there, particularly Amazon and so forth. So the seat you're running for is in the Virginia House of Delegates, 49th district, which is like Arlington. I'll pull up a map in a moment. Can you tell me, basically about your race? The primary is June 8th. Your website is karishmaforvirginia.com, which I'll pull up in a moment. The incumbent is a Democrat. Just talk to me a little bit about, the race that you're in.
Yeah, so I've lived in District 49 where I'm running for about 7 years. I'm a renter. I've always been a renter. And, I was displaced in the middle of this pandemic. I had to move out of my apartment into a new apartment because of rent cost. And so, I started doing a lot of research in the past couple of years on who was representing this district. Why were things getting so out of control with the rising cost of rent, with people being unable to afford their basic human needs. And I recognize that there was a real gap in leadership here. And this was a district that was experiencing a massive amount of growth. We have Pentagon City, where there's a lot of development happening. But along Columbia Pike and towards the western side of our district, we have a lot of migrant families. We have a lot of undocumented families. We have people from the African community that have migrated here. Over 100 languages are spoken in this district, and the majority of the residents here are 18 to 45. And so we were presented with this incredible moment where we have a lot of young people, a lot of working class renters, a lot of migrants here that were being left out of the conversation. And, we started this primary knowing that there was a good opportunity for a progressive to stand up for what's right. And so looking at this district, it's quite gerrymandered. There's some wonkiness going on there, but I've grown to love that shape and everyone in it. And I'm just so excited to be running and representing the people who have been forgotten in this district and the people most vulnerable that need the support during this time. So this primary is on June 8th. We were anticipating between June 8th and August because of some redistricting. The census occurred, and so there's new maps to be drawn. But I don't think that'll be happening in time for our primary. So we'll be sharing the ballot with the governor's race, and that's on June 8th. So we're looking forward to it. Just moving forward very quickly.
Great. Usually I ask people to brag on their district, but you did it even before I had to, I like hearing people talk about their town and what they love about it. And you're right. This is gerrymandered like crazy. You see this little indent here. It's ridiculous, right? But while I was here, I wanted to pull that up just for, give people a sense, right? And it's gerrymandered for a reason, right? They want low voter turnout, right? They want to pick their voters. But, your website is karishmaforvirginia.com. All of your issues are here. Your donate button is right there, top right. Just great content on here. You can sign up and volunteer. Here's Karishma's campaign ad, which I'm going to play as we go out, which is just a great ad. It's really, really wonderful. But the thing that I absolutely loved about your website was this statement right here. Our campaign is 100% funded by people, not corporations or special interests. So, Karishma needs our help, right? So you can donate here, get involved, from anywhere in the country. I'm assuming you have phone banking, texting, and so forth, right? People can
Absolutely. Lots of virtual opportunities, lots of ways to get involved from wherever you are. And just like it says there, it'll take a movement. It's going to take everyone to make this happen. So get involved.
Right on. So let's talk a little bit about your platform and so forth, right? And your history. You mentioned your parents' struggles through immigration and stuff. I wonder if you could share something about that. And if it's too personal, just say, take a hike, dude. But I wonder if you could share something that maybe people don't know that haven't gone through that. You mentioned struggles and so forth, right? What should we know for those of us, to like humanize that experience a little bit for us, if you could?
Just speaking on my parents' struggle a little bit about their immigration, when these are not really topics that I've ever discussed, just because, not only is there a demonization of immigrants here, but it's specifically Black and brown immigrants, right? We have this issue with white supremacy in this country, where the people that were here and the people that were forcibly brought here, even they are not represented, and even they're treated like they don't belong in this country. And so, of course, Black and brown immigrants that willingly and voluntarily want to seek a better life in this country are not going to be able to do that when we've designed a system that excludes them on purpose. So, my parents came here not really understanding those dynamics of capitalism, dynamics of how the U.S. functions, and not only economically, but also racially. And
Right.
I remember my mom telling me a story about them being at the grocery store, and I was about a year old, and they were coming out of the grocery store with all of their things in the cart. They got everything packed up, and all of a sudden, a group of young white men, approached my dad, and he had to lock my mom and I in the car. I was a very young baby, and so I didn't really know what was going on. But he eventually had to be taken to the hospital, because of that sort of attack that happened. And I never really even knew about that until I was much older. I never fully grasped, what they went through to bring up, myself, but also my siblings in a happy environment where, we were sheltered from that as much as possible.
Right.
I think I had my own experiences, of course, when I was in elementary school. I joined martial arts because, it was the one way I felt I had some control over my environment, because I was also starting to experience some of those physical and verbal abuse and intimidation from people at school, just because of my background as a child of immigrants. So, I grew up through that, and I found an outlet through martial arts and through that. But it was definitely, it had an impact on me, and it still does, and it informs my
Yeah.
platform, and everything that I do. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I didn't mean to get so personal on it, but it's important to highlight the experience because we're in this the con man just left the White House, right? So a lot of people were politically animated by him, but things like you just described, which is absolutely horrific, it didn't start with him, right? And these fights are systemic and they need to continue, right? So
Absolutely.
overlaying your experience, what would you hope to do, in terms of, should you make it in the House of Delegates, just in this area? We'll talk about, I guess we can fold in Black Lives Matter and so forth, racial justice, immigration justice, right? What would you hope to do about that?
I think that our collective struggle towards liberation, towards making sure all people are free, that is all linked. And
Yeah.
so, although, the demands of the movement might be different when it comes to the Black community, when it comes to the Latinx community, in the end, what we're fighting, is a carceral system. In the end, what we're fighting is an unjust economic system that's rigged, clearly, as we're seeing all over Twitter, all over everywhere,
Right.
talking about all these stocks and hedge fund crybabies. And so I think that when we're talking about these things, I personally like to take a holistic approach. Are we guaranteeing everyone their basic economic and human rights? And that means, are we ensuring that they are not the target of police brutality? We're making sure that they're not subjected to mass incarceration. We're making sure that their property and their land and everything that they're trying to build for their generation is not stolen from them, right? When we're talking about the indigenous community, I think that all of those things are linked, and when we have to simultaneously dismantle a lot of those things that haven't been built for us intentionally, but we also have this beautiful opportunity to build, right? To build new systems, to build new policies and communities that actually protect and uplift all people. And so we're in this moment where you kind of have to do both. You have to work both of those levers at the same time. And I'm so excited to continue doing that through policy.
I love it. And you talked about working, advocating for renters' rights. That's one of those things. If you're undocumented, that's one of those, they're easy prey for, bad faith landlords and so forth, right? I'm sure you've been seeing that firsthand as well.
Absolutely. We've been doing a lot of work in the district and also, in neighboring districts around landlords that are raising the rent or not, taking care of the apartment in a way that, the apartment is safe and habitable. I was speaking with somebody, one of my friends who works in a different state. He works in sort of code management and ensuring that landlords are following, some of those housing laws. And he was saying that there's undocumented workers that live in complexes where the entire thing is dilapidated. They force the workers to rebuild that by hand through their own skills, because a lot of these workers are contractors, they're construction workers, and so they're forcing these undocumented people to do free labor on their property in exchange for a month of free rent, which is completely outlandish. Those are not even at the same level of price, right? So we're seeing all kinds of exploitation, retaliation, threatening, and intimidation in calling ICE. And now ICE has become a proxy for landlords to do whatever they want to their tenants, without any sort of repercussions. So, we're fighting back against that, but also the money that these corporate landlords are receiving from the government. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that's a big thing in your district, right? Being just outside of DC, that I'm assuming 80% of your population are lobbyists that work in DC and bribe politicians for a living, right? I'm exaggerating, but I'm sure they're there, and I'm sure there's a corporate real estate component or a real estate or lobby that is has a strong arm in your district. Can you talk about whether that's true, and if and how you would fight them? And is the incumbent in bed with that? I'm gonna just ask directly. It's Alfonso Lopez is the incumbent.
Yeah, sure. So, I can't speak to who, whether they're living in the district, but I'm sure, they're around and they're aware of what's going on. They're very much paying attention to this campaign, specifically because we've taken a hard stance against corporate developers that are pushing people out, that are displacing and gentrifying this district at such a rapid pace. One of the things that I always start off with is that the fundamental difference between the incumbent and the challenger is that, we consider housing a human right. We consider housing as something that should be guaranteed, not affordable, not accessible, that all human beings should be guaranteed a place to live. And whether that's a pathway to home ownership or public housing, or universal rent control, those are all methods of ensuring that people are kept safe, that especially in a pandemic. So I think that when we're talking about this in this district, what we're saying is, we want to cut those subsidies off. We don't want thousands and thousands of dollars from, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to be given to landlords. We don't want it to be given to corporate developers, because they're taking advantage of this thing called artificial shortage. There is no housing shortage in Virginia, right? So if there's no shortage of housing, why are you building more, right? It's a method and a tactic of stealing money, stealing taxpayer money from the government. That's not okay. And, there are people that are living out on the street that could be given 10 of these vacant homes and there would still be a surplus. So, we're talking about an insane amount of vacant units that they're just sitting on, while people are sleeping out on the streets, while veterans are sleeping out on the streets. And it's an injustice that can be so easily fixed with the right conviction, with the right policy and integrity, in our politicians. So, that's the main difference. It's the integrity. It's what we consider as human rights versus commodities. And I don't think that housing is a commodity.
Right. Yeah. And boy, you called it out too. They use those buzzwords of accessibility and affordability, right? Access, right? That's it's intentionally deceptive, right? And I'm assuming the incumbent, I'm going to just call him a corporate Democrat, right? And it's an uphill climb for you, fighting against that machine, but you are just and righteous, right? So, this is one of those candidates. Like, I'm going to just say KarishmaForVirginia.com. Like this is a candidate, if you were animated by Trump and there are races around the country that you can get involved in, get engaged in. Every donation helps a campaign like this. And, she's not taking corporate money. She's fighting this big, real estate machine, and she needs our help, right? The people are on your side. The money is on his side, right? It's the Bernie Sanders story. It's so many progressive stories, right? So, Karishma needs our help. I stumbled over it, but it's KarishmaForVirginia.com. Please go make a donation, sign up, volunteer, share this video, share her socials, like her socials, get involved. Primary is June 8th. If you know anybody in Arlington, in that district, in that area, Fairfax, let them know, right? Let's talk a little bit more about, some of your policies and things. I saw on your website, Green New Deal for Virginia. Can you talk about, what that would look like?
Absolutely. So I'm proud to be the only Green New Deal champion in this race. That includes not taking a penny of fossil fuel money. That includes supporting the Green New Deal package, which includes, multitude of pieces of legislation that are currently being read in the House. So they've been introduced, they've been assigned a committee. And so we're very excited to see some of these really important climate justice bills get passed this year. One of the things that we're really fighting for, of course, is banning those subsidies, ensuring that there's a moratorium on fossil fuels, on pipelines and pipeline infrastructure, not just the pipeline itself, but any kind of infrastructure that would support future pipeline building. That's not something we talk about, but supporting those things, ensuring that we have a just transition for workers. There are lots of workers in the fossil fuel industry. We have to make sure that we're ensuring that they have a good union job in the sustainable energy sector. And then one of my biggest priorities is making sure that fossil fuel companies do not monopolize and cannot enter the sustainable energy sector and continue to expand, their influence. And the reason is that, I don't think that people understand that these companies are not necessarily attached to what they're doing. They're not attached to fossil fuels. They're not attached to this. They're attached to their profits and they're attached to their power. And that can easily come if they continue to monopolize in other areas like green energy. And so we want to stop that. We want to dismantle that from the very beginning and make sure that that doesn't happen. And then also, ensuring that the frontline communities that have been most impacted by climate change, by the fossil fuel industry, that includes Black and Indigenous communities, Latinx communities, that have pipelines just up and down their neighborhoods, have the appropriate, that we take measures to protect them in the future, but we're also investing back into those communities to make sure that they're where they need to be and to be protected. So those are some of the things that I would like to see as we move forward. We have so much work to do before 2030. It's just, it's right around the corner.
Yeah. I mentioned it at the top, that your video, and again, I'll play it on the way out. You mentioned incrementalism and, can you talk about, that number 2030, like, we, to quote Dr. King, who's over my shoulder here, like, we need to seriously get into the fierce urgency of now. Can you talk about that? Just talk about that, the need to do that. We're running out of time, not to be alarmist, but just talk about that if you would.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Martin Luther King. He spoke very powerfully about the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. This is something that not only politicians, but corporate media, corporate PR, they're all giving us, this false sense of comfort and safety, and that everything is fine. Things are, we don't need to change anything, right? Meanwhile, forests are burning, like we're having massive floods. I mean, water levels are sea levels rising. These wildfires that we saw in California, just absolutely heartbreaking, completely avoidable. And that's what I think that, we as a society need to be working towards, systems that protect not only our people, but our planet. We need to be thinking about this next generation of young people. What kind of world are we leaving them? We might not be here. Some of these people that are making decisions in Congress or in the state legislatures, I'm sorry, maybe you won't be here in 2030, but these young people will be.
Yeah.
It's an injustice to not fight hard and to fight now, to do everything we can. We might not even get to where we need to be at this point, but we
Yeah.
have to make sure we're taking every opportunity to fight every day for that.
Yeah, here. It's it brings to mind that instance from 2 years ago or so when teenagers went to Dianne Feinstein's office and she kind of shushed them, right? That was just terribly offensive, right? And what you said is exactly right, and I'm glad you shared that. Before we went live, we were talking a little bit about there are barriers that prevent working class folks from running for office, right? So you mentioned you're an educator and so forth. Can you talk about, and this is your first race, can you talk about the challenges of like jumping into a race and working a full-time job, and
Mhm.
what's that like? And it's intentionally designed that way, but it takes it takes candidates like you, and AOC was a great example, Cori Bush. Like, it takes these people, working class folks, a lot of gumption and a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears to run these races, deliberately rigged in such a way. Can you just talk about your experiences heretofore in dealing with that?
Absolutely. I, you know, Growing up, I never felt represented. I never cared about politics, and I never really even understood how to get involved in a way that I could make a difference. As I moved into organizing, as I got my chance to do electoral work for Bernie Sanders, I started realizing that everyday working people should be running. Why aren't they? What's going on that all these amazing people that we're organizing with, they're not running? And there's just such a high cost and a barrier to entry, whether that's a filing fee of thousands of dollars, whether that's in Virginia specifically, our legislature only works for about 30 days or give or take a few days, out of the entire year. That's not only ineffective legislating, but who does that type of legislature cater to?
Right.
When you can take off a month just randomly to
Right.
go and legislate for your state and pass laws and then go back to your life. I don't think any teacher in Virginia could do that. I don't think a carpenter or a farmer, or an everyday working class person could do that. And what I've noticed in this race specifically is that you just have to have so much anger like fueling you every day. Like, I have to do this. I work 10 hours a day as a teacher, but oh my God, I have to do another 10 more, to ensure that we're winning, that we're fighting for the right policies. And, this is not just a protest campaign, right? We're
Yeah.
trying to build out a movement. We are building towards a long-term vision, and that coalition doesn't just appear overnight. And so that is a lot of hard work for a working person. And although it's 100% worth it, and I would not trade it for the world, I do think that we need to be making it easier for people to run. We need to be breaking that idea and notion that that you need like a specific type of resume. You have to come up through the establishment. You have to be a lawyer, or you have to have a political degree. You don't have to have any of that. Where does it say that in the Constitution, right? It doesn't say that anywhere. So you can come as you are. That's what I say to all people that are considering a path or run for office. Come as you are. You can do it just as you are. You don't have to change yourself. You just have to be connected to your community and be willing to fight those powerful special interests.
God, I love that. And so you're so right on, right? So, yeah, thanks for the the anger to do that, the righteous anger, right? You know what you're doing is just, right? And I'll just reiterate it. And all the candidates I have on, you can see a difference, right? I don't mean to pick on Tim Kaine, but we're talking about Virginia, right? You can tell the difference in a Tim Kaine who has corporate backing versus Karishma, who works those 10 extra hours just because she knows, she sees the tenant rights, she sees the immigration issues, she sees the, racial disparity. Like, so, there's a huge difference in someone who's unbought and unbossed and some of the corporate Democrats that are incumbents now, right? So, like you said, a movement doesn't happen overnight, but, Bernie begets AOC and the squad, and they beget, the next generation, and Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and Karishma and Mondaire Jones. And, we keep building this collection of progressives, right? And, there are waves on the shore, we keep adding more and more. And, I admire your fortitude and your courage to run this race. And, it's a big machine you're fighting. And again, I'll just say it, like, KarishmaForVirginia.com, every donation is going to help, right? And campaigns like yours, the earlier you donate, the more impact it has, right? So, and if you can't donate, share this video, spread the word. It goes a long, long way. You can text and donate, right? At KarishmaForVirginia.com. Yeah, and the primary is June 8th. I will reiterate that. And anything policy-wise that we didn't hit on that you want to, that's in your platform that you want to focus on before we
as a teacher, education and my my hope for public schools is something that I keep close to me. As we get into the very real possibility that we'll be winning, that we'll be having to choose our first pieces of legislation. We're trying to imagine what we need to prioritize, and funding for schools, pay raises for teachers, ensuring that every school has a nurse and a counselor. My ideal school system is one that has anti-racist, culturally responsive, and historically accurate curriculum, that has a garden for every child to be able to go in and get food, community health clinics. I mean, all of those are the possibilities that we're fighting for. And so this is a campaign of what is possible and that better world we can build. And I'm just so excited to keep fighting for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So KarishmaForVirginia.com. I'm going to close out. Thanks for taking time to chat with me. And like I said earlier, thanks for running. It takes a lot to run, and, win, lose, or draw, you're leaving it all on the field. And, Godspeed. June 8th is the primary. I can't wait to have you back on and call you. Would it be delegate?
It would be delegate, yes.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. So, please come back when you kick his ass and you're in, you're inaugurated and so forth. Or if you have a story to tell, you're always welcome back. I admire what you're doing, and keep it up. June 8th, KarishmaForVirginia.com. Thank you for taking some time to chat with me today. And like I said, I'm going to close out on your ad, which is, it's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Stick around and watch that. It's like AOC's ad. It's inspiring, and it'll bring a tear to your eye. So I'm going to close with that now. Thank you, Karishma.
Thank you.
There's a story of a little girl. Her parents came to this country looking for a better life. She was born into a struggling, working-class family that moved around a lot because of high rent and very few job opportunities. Her parents did their best to put food on the table, even if they couldn't afford health care for themselves after 15-hour workdays. I try to teach with high expectation, safety, love, and joy. Like many of my students, I wake up every day and commute to school in rush hour traffic. I've seen parents pay thousands each month for a quality education, while public school students go hungry or they stay in debt. Those experiences are mine, but they are also the lived experience of millions of kids who are told that they aren't a priority. My name is Karishma Mehta, and I'm running to represent Virginia's 49th district in the House of Delegates. There comes a time where you look at the families you serve and say enough is enough. Life for me has always been about service, community, and building people power. As luxury developers displace the working class and corporations like Amazon steal hundreds of millions of dollars away from the community during a global pandemic, we have risen up to demand better. I have seen strength, resilience, and hope in the darkest of times. We have come together to show Black Lives Matter, to free immigrants in detention centers, to protect the post office, to feed our students and families that are struggling to eat, to help our neighbors from being evicted. We are on the streets demanding justice, while powerful Virginia Democrats continue to choose incrementalism and put profits over people. Our district leads, as Frederick Douglass said, not with light, but fire. We have built a living, breathing movement of working class people in the 49th district. This isn't about one campaign or one election cycle, but a chance to elect a people's movement rooted in direct action, mutual aid, compassion, and a vision for a better world. Our human rights are not for sale. Our families and homes are not for sale. Virginia is not for sale.